What if I told you that Jesus left a hidden message inside 3 simple words, words capable of awakening a light so profound within you that it could quietly transform the way you see yourself and the world? Before I reveal them, I need to ask you another question, one you may have carried for years without even realizing it. Why do some people radiate a serene, grounded, almost unbreakable presence, while others walk through life as if something inside them has dimmed, waiting for a single breath to bring them back? This difference isn't born out of chance. It comes from a spiritual mystery that stretches across centuries, echoes through the stories of the ancients, and reaches its peak in the teachings of Jesus. Because when he spoke of light, he wasn't talking only about faith, nor solely about virtue. He was speaking of the human essence. He was speaking of the spark every person carries, even when they forget about it. He was speaking of that inner flame that life, with its wounds, fears, and fractures, tries to cover, but can never destroy. The truth is, each of us lives between 2 spaces, the shadow that confuses and the light that reveals. And it's in the meeting of these 2 extremes that the soul's journey begins. Jesus understood this. That's why he said, "The lamp of the body is the eye." Not the eyes that simply observe the external world, but the ones that see what the heart tries to say in silence. And when he said, "You are the light of the world," it wasn't to give a spiritual title, but to remind you of an identity long forgotten. He wasn't pointing to something you needed to earn. He was pointing to something you already have. But if that light is already within you, why do so many people struggle to feel it? Why do so many walk carrying burdens they were never meant to carry? Why do so many lose their own voice in the noise of the world? Maybe because, throughout life, we've been trained to doubt everything that comes from within. We learn to trust external approval more than inner wisdom, and so, little by little, the light that should guide us becomes suffocated by layers of fear, pressure, and misunderstood stories. Even then, Jesus insisted, the light does not go out. It may hide, it may be ignored, but it remains. And he left 3 words, simple, discreet, almost unnoticed in the Gospels, that work like spiritual keys capable of opening the forgotten door inside you. 3 words that reveal, awaken, and guide. But before you receive them, there is something essential you must understand. Many people never access this teaching because they try to hear the words without preparing the heart first. And Jesus always taught those who were willing to feel, not just listen. So on this journey, you will rediscover the light that has always been there, and when the moment of revelation comes, it will make sense in a way it never has before. We're just getting started. When Jesus walked among the people, he didn't just heal bodies, he awakened consciousness. Every gesture, every parable, every moment of silence carried the intention of reminding people of what was already inside them, but buried beneath the weight of existence. Jesus never spoke of light as something that came from the outside, as if it were a gift reserved only for the worthy. On the contrary, he spoke of it as a reality that precedes life itself, a spark that exists before any personal story. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he wasn't pointing to a faraway place, but to an inner dimension we've forgotten, a space of presence, clarity, and truth. The inner light, for Jesus, is not an abstract concept. It is consciousness. It is perception. It is the awakening of the real self, the one that exists before the wounds, before the guilt, before the masks the world forces us to wear. This light is the part of you that never changes, even when everything else does. It is the part of you that observes, knows, and senses. It is that soft voice that insists on speaking, even when the noise around you tries to silence it. And when Jesus said, "I am the light of the world," he wasn't claiming exclusivity. He was inviting you to see that this same light can express itself within you. He was the model, the reflection, the living symbol of what anyone can awaken. But if this light is so powerful, why do so many people feel disconnected from it? Because the modern world, like the ancient one, has a nearly cruel talent for separating people from themselves. We are trained to believe our worth is in our productivity, appearance, or social validation. We carry guilt that isn't ours, believe in stories that shrink us, and feel small under expectations we can't meet. And so, the light meant to guide us becomes buried under fear, self-punishment, limiting beliefs, and emotional noise that twists the way we perceive the world. Jesus knew about this inner conflict, which is why he spoke in metaphors that were both simple and profound. When he said we are the salt of the earth, he was reminding us of the inner purpose in every life, the ability to transform, preserve, and bring flavor to the world. When he spoke of the mustard seed, the smallest of seeds, he showed that the soul's potential isn't measured by its size, but by its willingness to grow. And when he described the seed that grows in silence, unnoticed, he revealed the hidden nature of inner transformation. It happens within, far from the public eye, until the day it suddenly blooms. These metaphors are not mere illustrations. They are reminders that the inner light is a process, not an event. It must be recognized, cared for, nourished, and at the same time, it never depends entirely on the external world. Modern society, with its rush, its competition, its constant comparison, tries to convince us we are not enough, that we must run faster, surpass everyone, reach an invisible goal that constantly moves. Yet Jesus points in the opposite direction. Instead of searching outside, he calls us inward, to find in the stillness of the soul what truly matters. And at this point, even distant philosophical traditions converge. Stoicism speaks of the divine spark inside every human. Buddhism speaks of the inherent enlightened nature. Vedanta speaks of the Atman, the inner presence that reflects the whole. And all of these systems echo the same truth Jesus taught: the light is within you. It is not something you earn. It is something you uncover when your inner shadows begin to be understood, embraced, and dissolved. But before receiving the 3 words Jesus left as spiritual keys, you must understand something. Only those willing to open the door can use the key. That means that before the revelation comes the preparation, a heart made ready. Because if someone hears the right words with a closed heart, they are just sounds. But if they hear with a ready soul, those sounds become fire, direction, transformation. That's why, right now, you may feel that something big is approaching. Something strangely familiar, as if you've heard it somewhere before, but never like this. This is the loop Jesus created in his teachings. He made you remember what you've always known, but lost along the way. The 3 words you'll hear soon are not magic. They are revealing. They activate, awaken, align. And for many, they mark the beginning of a turning point in their spiritual journey. When you understand the true meaning of the inner light, you'll be ready. And that's exactly what we're building now: a prepared heart, an awakened consciousness, a spirit open to what comes next. Very soon, the 3 words will be revealed. But first, breathe, feel, sense the quiet light already within you. You'll need it for the next step. There are moments in life when we feel we're standing before something greater than ourselves, as if an ancient truth were about to cross time and reach our hearts with the same force it reached those who walked beside Jesus. This is one of those moments, because now, finally, we arrive at the 3 words he left as keys capable of awakening the quiet light inside you. 3 simple, direct, deeply spiritual words. Before speaking them, take a deep breath. Allow your inner world to settle, as if becoming a field ready to receive a seed. Because each word is not just a concept, it's a living practice, a spiritual direction, an invitation to real transformation. The first word is recognize. It seems small, but its spiritual weight is immense. Recognizing isn't just seeing, it's admitting, accepting, allowing truth to reveal itself. It is the first movement of every spiritual awakening. Jesus didn't begin transformations by imposing something from the outside. He began by revealing what was already within. When he told someone, "Your faith has made you whole," he was asking them to recognize their own light, their own capacity, their own inner strength. He was saying, see what is already yours, see what has always been there. Recognition is the moment light begins cutting through darkness. Why does this word activate hidden light? Because what you do not recognize, you cannot access. What you deny in yourself, your strength, your goodness, your divine essence, remains dormant. Recognizing lifts the veil. It lights the first flame. Imagine someone who spent years believing they're not enough. That person doesn't need the world to proclaim their strength. They need to recognize the strength they already have. It's an inner shift. A small example. Someone going through a difficult phase, full of uncertainty, suddenly pauses, breathes, and says, "I need to recognize what I'm feeling. I need to recognize who I am." In that instant, something changes. A small awakening. An opening. Light. And that's why the guiding phrase for this word is, when you recognize who you are, no shadow can convince you otherwise. The second word is allow. If recognizing is the first step, allowing is the bridge. Allowing is creating space. It is letting the light move. It is the moment you surrender, let go, trust. Jesus spoke constantly about this inner openness. When he said, "Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear," he wasn't speaking only of sound, he was speaking of receptivity. Allowing is letting God work without resistance. It's opening the heart even in the presence of fear. It's letting truth enter even when it feels uncomfortable. It's letting your essence shine, even when the world prefers you to stay hidden. This word activates the light because every transformation needs room to grow. Nothing flourishes in hardened soil. Allowing softens the ground of the soul. It's like opening a window in a dark room. The light was always outside. Someone simply needed to turn the handle. In everyday life, allowing is when you stop fighting yourself. It's when you let peace in, let help in, let clarity in. Imagine someone struggling with anxiety. The mind wants to control everything. But in a moment of stillness, that person breathes and says, "I allow myself to feel. I allow healing to take place." And something softens. Something rearranges. Jesus taught this when he said, "Do not let your heart be troubled." It wasn't a rigid command. It was an invitation to allow calm, allow divine presence, allow the light to show itself. The guiding phrase for this word is, when you allow, God does what you were holding back out of fear. The third word is choose, because no light sustains itself without decision. Choosing is the conscious movement that turns revelation into a path. Jesus always honored free will. He said, "Follow me," but he never dragged anyone by the hand. He respected the choice because he knew the light only becomes real when someone chooses to live it. Choosing isn't easy. It's the moment you stand in your own truth. It's when you decide to be who you were created to be, even when it requires courage. It's when you choose to walk toward the light, even when the shadow feels familiar. This word activates the light because it turns potential into reality. You can recognize your essence. You can allow it to move. But without choice, everything remains suspended. Choosing is the final act that integrates transformation. It's like the decision a plant makes to break through the soil and reach for the sun. Imagine someone who recognizes the need to change, who allows the heart to open, but finally says, "I choose to live in a new way. I choose the path of light." Jesus always created space for that decision. When he asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" he was inviting the person to choose their destiny, their healing, their life. The guiding phrase for this word is, you become light when you choose to live what you recognize and allow. Now observe the spiritual flow of these three words. Recognize is vision. Allow is openness. Choose is movement. It's a perfect upward path. Jesus never gave disconnected teachings. Every word he offered had purpose. And these three, united, create a powerful movement capable of reigniting the light you've doubted for so long. They form a living cycle. You recognize the light that exists, allow it to shine, and choose to follow its path. It is a journey, an ascent, a transformation that begins in silence and ends in clarity. But there is still something essential before moving forward, because understanding the words is not enough. You must learn how to use them in real life, with its pressures, heavy days, responsibilities, and emotional storms, and that is exactly what we explore next. The revelation has been given, but the path is still unfolding. And the most practical part, the one that changes everything, is about to begin. Prepare yourself. The light now knows the way out. Recognize, allow, and choose. 3 words that seem to belong to a higher spiritual plane. But their true strength only appears when they reach the ground of real life. The place where we deal with exhaustion, doubts, pressure, responsibilities, and moments when the soul forgets how to breathe. Real inner light does not shine only in moments of peace. It reveals itself especially in those moments when everything inside you feels dark. And that is why these 3 words must be brought into daily life, into simple situations, into quiet struggles, into the challenges no one sees. Because it is there, behind the scenes of life, that the light proves itself true. When you recognize, daily, who you are and what you're feeling, you prevent yourself from getting lost inside your own mind. Recognizing is not weakness, it is clarity. A simple example: at work, when you're overwhelmed, the instinct is to tighten up, ignore your exhaustion, and push through. But the light begins when you breathe and silently say, I recognize what's happening inside me. That emotional honesty creates clarity. You begin to see solutions that were previously hidden. In relationships, recognizing means admitting when something hurts, when something needs attention, or when change is needed. When Jesus told us to look at ourselves before judging others, he was teaching the daily practice of recognition, self-observation that illuminates, guides, transforms. Then comes the practice of allowing, in a society that teaches us to control everything. Allowing is a spiritual act of courage, allowing yourself to feel, to rest, to receive help, to let something new enter, to let God work where you cannot reach. On days of anxiety, for example, allowing means stopping the internal fight and creating space for the mind to reorganize. When Jesus spoke about not worrying about tomorrow, he was inviting the human heart to allow divine providence to flow. Allowing is not passivity, it is active trust. In everyday life, allowing can be as simple as accepting that you don't need to be perfect, that you can fail, that you can try again. It's opening the door for the light to move freely within you. And then comes choosing, the most challenging and yet most liberating practice. Choosing every day is like lighting a candle every morning, even when the sky is gray. At work, choosing means acting with integrity even when no one is watching. In relationships, choosing means deciding to love even when pride tries to speak louder. In spirituality, choosing means deciding to seek light even when the shadow feels safer. Jesus always valued choices. He never forced anyone to follow him. He simply invited. Choosing is always an act of love. Love for God, love for life, love for yourself. And when you decide, day after day, to walk toward the light, your life slowly reorganizes around that decision. But what about when the light seems to go out? Because sometimes it really does feel that way. There are days when everything feels heavy, when your heart seems far away, when your soul feels too tired to try. On those days, the words become even more necessary. Recognizing you're in the dark is the first step. Allowing the light to return, even slowly, is the second. Choosing to keep walking, even without strength, is the third. Jesus spoke about perseverance, about active faith, about moving forward even when your feet tremble. He said that light does not hide forever. It simply waits for you to make room for it again. And in modern life, with constant pressure, silent comparisons, identity crises, emotional challenges, these 3 words become a refuge. They guide difficult decisions, strengthen the soul when everything falls apart, and remind you that there is a light inside you that does not depend on anyone's opinion, nor circumstance, nor past. They work as a spiritual method that places you back at your center, in your truth, in who you've always been, and now everything begins to take shape. Because once you know how to apply these words, we can deepen the emotional and spiritual impact they carry. This journey is reaching a decisive moment, the deep reflection that touches the soul. There is a light within you that does not need the world in order to exist. It is not born from praise. It does not fade with criticism. It does not grow with success, and it does not shrink with failure. This light comes before your achievements and remains after your mistakes. It does not need applause to shine because its origin is not external, it is internal. Jesus tried again and again to remind us of this. When he said, "You are the light of the world," he was speaking of a profound spiritual identity, something no storm can erase. He saw essence before history, spirit before wounds, light before shadows. The inner light has no need to eliminate darkness. It has the courage to move through it. Just like a sunbeam finds a crack between clouds and transforms everything around it, the light within you also moves through the small fractures of the soul. There is something deeply beautiful about this. The light does not require perfection. It only needs space. A candle shines even when it trembles. A flame warms even when it's small. And a heart, when it begins to awaken, can illuminate entire paths effortlessly simply by being what it is. We often lose ourselves trying to become what the world expects. But the light doesn't ask you to fit in. It asks you to return. Return to yourself. Return to truth. Return to what Jesus always knew about you, that there is a sacred, silent, invincible glow pulsing inside your being. And when you turn inward, even slowly, that light answers. It moves. It grows. It calls you. The question now is not, where is the light? The question is, are you willing to see it? Now that you've walked this inner journey, you may already feel how each of the three words echoes within you, in a way that isn't just mental, it's spiritual, visceral, almost ancestral. They act like three threads of the same fabric, three notes of the same melody, three steps leading to the same awakening. And as you revisit them gently, not as repetition but as integration, you begin to see that they form a true spiritual method, simple and profound, exactly the way Jesus taught. The first word, recognize, is awakening. It's the moment truth stops being a possibility and becomes a presence. When you recognize your light, your value, your essence, something shifts. It's like opening your eyes after a long time in the dark. You don't see everything at once, but you see enough to know there is a path. This word reignites the spark, reminding you of who you were before scars, before fear, before the external voices that tried to define you. Jesus knew no one can walk in the light while denying their own spiritual identity. That's why he always began by reminding people of who they were. The second word, allow, is surrender, not a fragile surrender, but a courageous one. It's the moment you open your heart and let the light work without trying to control it. When you allow God to move and when you allow healing to unfold, when you allow truth to enter, life begins to reorganize. It's like opening the windows of a house that has been closed for years. The air changes, the atmosphere changes, you change. Jesus invited people again and again to allow the divine touch, not through force, but through openness. In allowing, you stop being your own barrier. The third word, choose, is ascension. It is the moment everything you recognized and allowed becomes movement, direction, life. Choosing is walking with intention. It is taking responsibility for the light within you. It is deciding to live with purpose, even when the path is narrow. Jesus never took away humanity's power to choose. He honored it, because he knew that real light is not imposed, it is lived. When these three words come together, they form a perfect circle. You recognize who you are, you allow that truth to reshape you, and you choose to live aligned with the light that has awakened. This is the method. This is the key. This is the spiritual secret Jesus left so that anyone, in any era, could rediscover their divine spark. And perhaps the most beautiful part is realizing that none of this requires perfection. It only requires presence, intention, a sincere desire to walk toward the light that has always been within you. May these three words continue to echo in your heart long after this moment, because through them you discover who you truly are. Now that the journey reaches its end, something meaningful happens within you. Not simply understanding, but inner recognition. That quiet moment when the soul grasps something the mind is still trying to put into words. Because everything you've heard up to this point is not a speech, nor a list of spiritual ideas. It is an invitation, a call to look inward with the same depth Jesus used when he looked at those who walked beside him. He didn't see flaws, failures, or guilt. He saw potential. He saw light. He saw what many never dared to see in themselves, and now it's your turn to look inward, not as someone searching for something lost, but as someone finally remembering where the light has always been. There is a moment in life when we stop seeking answers outside and begin to realize that the real flame has always been kept in the simplest and yet most forgotten place, within. It is in this deep space that the three revealed words, recognize, allow, and choose, begin to take on a meaning like never before. They become more than teachings. They become a path, a silent map for the soul to find its own clarity. Jesus did not teach merely to inform. He taught to transform, and that transformation begins exactly where you are right now, in this moment. It doesn't matter what you've lived through, what you've lost, what you fear, or what you still seek. The light he spoke of does not depend on your story. It depends on your willingness to awaken. And if there is one thing Jesus made clear, it's that the light never abandons the one who decides to walk with it. So before we close, I want to ask you a question. Not for you to answer, but to spark a movement inside you. Which of the three words touched your heart the most? Maybe it was recognize, because you finally allowed yourself to see who you are. Maybe it was allow because you realized there are areas of your life in need of openness and rest. Or maybe it was choose, because deep down you know it's time to walk with intention and courage. Whichever it was, that word has already begun its work within you. And as you move forward, carry with you the certainty that the light Jesus described is not a distant destination, but a constant presence. It is here, breathing with you, walking with you, waiting only for you to continue this journey with an awakened heart. May your life from this moment on be guided by that light. May these three words echo whenever your path feels dark. And may you never forget, light is never lost. It is reborn every time you choose to look within.